Okay, so we'll just start with, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. I'm good.
And just a little introduction of you, your name, yourself, just any information.
Okay. Well, my name's Loretta Lapointe. I'm a member of the Keweenaw Bay Indian community, which is part of the Lake Superior Band of the Chippewa, which is another name for the Chippewa is the Ojibwe tribe, which is a very big tribe in the United States. Um, I grew up in the UP for the first 10 years of my life, and then I moved down here to Lower Michigan, and I did attend Western, graduated in December of 1980 with a degree in business administration with a major was accounting.
Well, sorry, I don't know what my next question was. What was your early life in the UP, the first 10 years?
Well, the first 10 years, I was born on the reservation in Lawrence. It's a fairly large reservation. Um, my older brother and sister were not born on the reservation, but my two younger brothers and myself were. However, we did not live on the reservation. We pretty much lived with my mother's community. My mother is first generation Finnish. My grandparents came from Finland, so we lived in a very small community where you had a church here and the old a store, like a country store that one would think of almost like Walton's, where you walk in and it's that kind of environment. Very rural, very. We were had very few neighbors, so to speak. We had one neighbor across the street, and then maybe a couple down the road, farming and that type of community, remote. But my mother's relatives were there, and that's where we went to school. Was in one room, kind of like schoolhouse. Like I had 5 kids in my class, and there would be like 3 class sizes, like first and second in one room, third and fourth, that kind of thing, where you had multiple grades in one room. So it was very small, very, very white in terms of we were the only Native American students there. And I have to say, despite that many of these people were my cousins, there was a lot of harassment, bullying, that type of thing. We, on occasion, went to Lawrence because there are some things you have to do because Lawrence was the bigger town. Like you went to grocery shop. My uncle was the barber, so you had to go get your hair cut there. So there was a little bit of mingling with my relatives, with my cousins on my dad's side, but most of the stuff was on my mother's side. And like I say, it was not a fun existence. There were times when I would see the older boys grab my brother and throw him down the gully behind the school, that kind of thing. It kind of taught you to kind of be what I call like wallpaper. Don't see me, don't threaten me kind of thing. And but my sister and my brother are more native looking than me. They have the dark hair, dark complexion. I take more after my mother's Finnish side. So in some degrees I didn't get picked on as much, but I saw it. And that's hard.
That is, yeah, that was gonna be my next question, was say, was the bullying because of
Oh yeah.
your native heritage and your connections?
Yeah. It was. There were times like my brother just recently told me that the only person that ever stood up for him was he went to my cousin's birthday party, and he was of course the only native one there, and the kids started harassing him, and he said our aunt stood up for him, and he said that's the only adult he can remember doing that. So it was just the way it was.
And that's difficult, not having support of the community around you. How close were you to the reservation from where you lived mostly?
About 20 minutes, not too far.
And how would you get there? Just
Just travel, you'd go by car. Um, it's along the Lake Superior shoreline. Keweenaw Bay is where Copper Harbor is. If you go up, it's the northernmost part of Michigan, but there's a bay, and the reservation wrapped around with the bay area. There was parts of it are in Baraga, parts are in Lawrence, Houghton, so it's along the lake shore. I do know that for some of my history, the tribes came from Quebec down the St. Lawrence River, went to Quebec, and then they went to Sault Ste. Marie, and they were looking for the holy place where food grows on the water, which is the rice, ricing. And when they got into Michigan, what we call Michigan now, some of the bands went south, like towards Mount Pleasant and even down Mississippi side of things. So the bands went farther. And then eventually in Bayfield, Wisconsin, they found, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but like Chickamauga Bay was where they found the rice. So they found the holy place, and that's where they resided. That's where my grandfather grew up, in Bayfield, Wisconsin. And there is a Apostle Island that fur trading was, back in the 1700s for the fur trading business. My great 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 grandmother married Michael Cadeau, who was very involved in the fur trade, and I don't know how to pronounce her native name, but he took her to Sault Ste. Marie, I think, to get married, and they changed her name to Madeline. And the biggest island is named after her on the Apostle Islands, Madeline Island. That's where they did their rendezvousing and so forth in the summertime. And the village there is Lapointe. I'm not sure if that's related to my French side, since our name's Lapointe, but it's a village outpost there. So that's kind of the history that I know of my family on my native side. But when it came to the reservation while I was growing up, I don't know any more of that. I believe I have found out that my grandfather and his children were in the Indian schools, and I think they were traumatized enough that they didn't want to have us around that environment. They never spoke of it. Both my grandfather, I didn't know my grandmother. She passed away before I was born. And my dad and his brothers were very quiet. They never talked about any of their childhood. More, they would have a good time. We had a lot of cousins. We would play together and so forth, but there was never any discussion about what happened to them. And to me, that's like two lost generations, where the goal was to erase the Native American culture, to kill the Indian but save the man kind of thing. That was the idea of General Pratt and the U.S. government, and unfortunately, they did this in combination with religious groups that didn't very religious as far as I'm concerned. I've read stories of people that went to the school and they felt lost and without direction in their life because they weren't given it. I didn't realize this, but in 1955 they were still taking kids out of their homes and bringing them to schools. So,
and that's a harsh history. Just for a second, I want to go back. You you said that you feel like those were two lost generations. And from what I understand, that, or what I'm gathering of an understanding is that must be really difficult because the connections that you have with elders is like storytelling and imparting wisdom and communicating through that, telling each other about the past and learning. That's what I'm trying to say. And when you don't have that connection, you're losing those memories and experiences and stories that you might have been told if it were not for.
Right. The the loss would be on for my grandfather and father not able to tell the stories because they were taught not to tell their stories, and for my generation not to hear the stories. But one positive thing about this is the stories are coming back. The tribe is teaching the language, teaching respect for the earth. I think there is a very big, one of the major tenets, I think, of Native Americans is, if the Creator made the earth, you better take care of it. You better learn how to keep it going and coexist with every life that's on this planet. It's not just the people, but it's the fish, the water, the snakes, whatever. It's everything. Everything has a place, and everything was given a place, and we have to honor their place as well as our own place. And they're trying to do that. Things are coming back. Our tribe has their own community college. They teach the native way. Um, the dancing, the powwows. I've been to those before, and it's the celebrations. That's part of the storytelling is in the dance and in their beliefs in the belief system is some of that. So it's all there's a resurgence there. The my cousins' kids and so forth. They're a part of that, and that's a good thing for them. The ones that stayed up there are more involved. Um, I do have to say, though, that my younger brother never went to school up there. He was only down here. And I feel like he became involved. He did his own beadwork and stuff and did his own outfit, his own regalia for the powwows, and he danced. And that was good to see.
What like traditions or you mentioned going to powwows and some of those things, but like what are there any traditions that you practiced when you were younger in the being up in the UP or even now? Any of these things that you hold on to?
Um, I can't say that we practiced um, anything native when I was growing up. It was, like I said, it was maybe my father couldn't do it. It was taboo for him to do it when he was a child. But I do know that, um, like for instance, we had friends here, and there weren't too many native students here in West Michigan where we went to school, but there were a couple of them. Like we did when my father passed away, he had a native ceremony, and there was a medicine man from that came to do the ritual for that, which is something that the medicine man and the departed do together. We're not a part of that, but we had a ceremony where we honored the all the directions, and tobacco played a big part in Native American and still does, where you use that for ceremony, and we had the ceremony in the church with that, with the sage and so forth. So we've seen some of those things, or I've seen some of those things practiced more when it came to that. Like when my sister got married, she had a Native American priest that did their ceremony and brought in some of the traditional rituals for that. But prior to that, in our childhood growing up, we didn't have that, but we've explored more, tried to be a little more aware of, the heritage and the rituals. Um, so, and that's been interesting. I've tried to find as much information as I can through the tribe or through other, you can Google just about anything these days and find stuff. So I've tried to follow my heritage. I did like the 23andMe thing and found out where the DNA comes from and so forth, and where the tribe settled. It kind of goes along with what they say about our coming from Canada. So it's interesting, but you can't find enough. I mean, the records are not well kept, I'm pretty sure, on the reservation, where you can really go back and find out about people that are part of your heritage, your family.
You've expressed a lot of information and history. Are those things that is it just a combination of learning from people, the internet, and is it a lot of the history that is that your own research, whether that's finding people to talk to, or is that things that were more imparted on you at all?
Well, on some of my ancestry, my uncle, my dad's youngest brother, well, I'll go back. My uncle worked here in Kalamazoo. He worked for the state hospital. He was in mental health there, and my cousins and him lived here for a number of years. And my father was a miner in the copper mines up north, but he was able to. The copper mines were getting mined out. There wasn't a lot of work. It was a lot of strikes and all that. There was no consistent income. We were rather poor when I grew up. But he was able to go to college up in the UP, and he took food service. So there was a opportunity for him to come and work at the state hospital in the kitchens. That's how we moved down here in 1967, was because he got a job with the state. And shortly thereafter, 2 years, I think within 2 years, we flipped. We were down here, and my uncle and his kids moved up. So they experienced the tribe and the reservation later on in life for them. But my uncle he was interested in our ancestry, and he's the one that went through and found out the generations that take us way back to the time before there was marrying of the French and so forth. So he did a lot of the work. He would have been a good person to talk to, because I think of all my uncles, he was the one that would have been more forthcoming of things. And it's through my conversations with my cousin, Carol, that I found out about the Indian schools and certain things, because they're very involved in the tribe currently. And my uncle was CEO for a while. My cousin's daughter is CEO right now of the tribe, and because they have a similar government, where you have, it's almost like a board of directors kind of thing. And so it was through him that I learned a lot about my ancestry, not so much about the rituals and so forth of the tribe. That I've had to kind of learn on my own. So
when did that learning process really take spark for you? Like, where you were like, I just want to learn and do it, if that was your process?
It was when I was older. When I was young, I think some of that, what I learned for my first 10 years of life about how to act and behave and not stand up and not stand out, I think that had a hold on me for quite a while. And then at some point, you just give that up and go on. So
it's the relinquishing of that shame and guilt placed on you for being an individual, not for doing anything wrong.
well, yes, and it's also, how do I, first of all, it's not only being Native American, and then when you realize that you're gay, then you have all those things that you don't want people to pick on you about, to kind of hide a little more. But I've discovered, though, that the tribe, the Ojibwe people, kind of revered the two-spirited people. They thought of the genders as you have a male perspective, a female perspective, and then you have the third gender. And the people that were third gender, two-spirited, they thought had a perspective of both sides so that they could bring healing, direction to the people. And men could live as women could live as men, and they didn't care. But it's the Indian schools that stopped that thought, that was wrong. So once I was able to say, this is not my shame, it is theirs, and say, I give that back to them.
Now you relinquish it. It doesn't harm you anymore. It doesn't have to. And that's really powerful. I'm glad that you were able to shed that.
And maybe I'm a little more emotional now because it's just been in recent years that I've been able to do that. So
That must take a toll.
But, I guess when the grandkids came along, I decided that I didn't want quiet. I didn't want not talking. I wanted them to be able to be who they wanted to be at all times. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. I don't know, David, if you...
But you know what I mean? You don't want to teach them to not be. You want to teach them to be proud of who they are, where they are, and what they want to do. Simple as that.
Yeah. Something that you've expressed you didn't get the luxury to have.
Correct.
Because of hate and misunderstanding and conformity to culture.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes it's hard to know that it's government sanctioned. But I'm not the only one who's had to suffer this way. There are other people.
And we learn more and more about that, every day as people tell their stories.
Well, everybody, and it's not just our race, it's other races that have had to deal with somebody telling them that they're not worthy of their own culture. I don't know how we can ever change that.
But just my own personal opinion of that is just to say more of what you want, allowing people to exist as themselves, their true existences. Conformity kills all of that.
Right, but you have to have, to me, it's like, how do you change the people's minds? I mean, I look at current events now and I feel like there is more, it's like white against everybody else. I feel like there is no, we have to stop being racist. I just don't know how they'll ever stop that. I mean, people are afraid, and I don't know why they're afraid. I mean, everybody should be here and bring what they have to the table for everybody to share, and it's not that way.
It's hard to understand.
Well, it's hard to overcome. How can you make those changes? I don't know how we'll do it.
I think maybe support, positive support for individuals. You know, you talked about a lot of difficulties that you've experienced. I just am interested in who you felt were like your biggest supporters, or people you found very influential in your life or that you sought out.
Um, One of the biggest supporters was my mother. She was more vocal than my father about our native. She wanted you to be proud of who you were, proud of being native, proud of. I think she wanted us to be proud of who we were on her side, being Finnish, but she wanted us to be proud and to not feel the shame, because I often wondered what her life was like, because I'm sure it wasn't fun for her up there either, to go out shopping or facing people who might have turned their back on her for marrying a Native American. Her younger sister just recently passed away, and she told me a story that really made me get a perspective on things. See, my grandmother, my mom's mom, had 4 boys, and then her first husband passed away, and she married another fella, and they had my mom and my 2 aunts. So he had 3 daughters with my grandmother. But my aunt told me that one of my uncles, who was always kind of gruff, kind of unfriendly, at one point in time had a Native girlfriend, and he has a Native child. And my grandfather said he could not bring her to the farm. So he passes away. My grandfather does. My mother marries, and my grandmother and everyone lets us there. It must have been hard for him. Just the little brown kids running around, and his child couldn't be there. It's racism within your own family.
It's hard when you're meshing sides and everyone's just trying to.
Right. Then I go back and think, okay, you're an immigrant from Finland for a reason. You were not treated right. How do you come back and treat somebody poorly? I don't understand.
A lot of these social power and control issues.
Yeah. It's amazing that you can't find your own pain that drove you out of your country, because I don't think anybody leaves their country and their homeland because it's not great for them to be there. They're either political or economic, or there's reasons why somebody leaves someplace that their family has been for years, generations. They're looking for a better life for their themselves and their family. So when you come here, you step on somebody else. Not good. That's a hard one to wrap your head around.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Loretta, I think that I could talk to you a ton.
You could.
But I just want to ask one more question, and
Sure.
I want you to say anything else you want to add. I know you had a lot of information that you kind of thought of and want to write down, but I asked this question to everyone else, and it was a good one that was brought up on my sheet. Is, what does it mean to be a good ancestor?
A good ancestor, for me anyway, is to inspire those in my family, even though they're not Native, but to inspire the same values, like into my grandchildren and my daughters, that we have to. I really, really believe that we have to take care of the earth. We have to take care of each other. An ancestor is somebody who passes down the knowledge and the important things. And that's one of the most important things, I think, is to honor your mother and to understand that the Creator has made this world for a reason, and if we want to have it and continue it, we have to protect it and the people on it to be willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much the rituals, whether you're going in a sweat lodge or doing those kinds of things. Those are things that you do for your spiritual side of things as a native, or fishing and then returning the fish. Those are the things, like right now they have fish hatcheries up north. They have ways to keep the world going and keep it clean and safe. That's part of being a good ancestor, is to think about what am I doing today and how will that affect my great-great-great-grandchildren. The 7-year philosophy. And to know that honesty, integrity, justice, those kinds of things are part of Native American culture as well. There wasn't. And the other thing is that everybody gets to have their own path. You can't walk it with some. You can walk by them for a while. You can be with them, but it is their path. I think you have to teach people that is, if you can't walk your own path, then there's something wrong. You need to figure out what that is, because you only get one life here on Earth, so you've got to figure your path. And be true to yourself. I think if you teach those values and then they teach those values, and it keeps going forward, where we protect our environment, we protect our souls as well by being self-aware.
And then I think, because you speak from a different experience, and I'd say even a different generation of individuals, what is something that I think that you would impart specifically to someone with similar experiences from what you've learned? Is something that you would tell them, and advice or things they'd want to know, or if that question makes sense?
You mean like somebody who's experienced racism or bullying or abuse and so forth?
Yeah, and something that you would want them to know or take hold.
I think in order to live a life where you're happy, and you have to kind of take all that's happened to you, whether it's been physical, emotional, sexual, whatever the abuses that you've had. You have to look at it and know that it's not you. You have to give that up. You have to say that's their shame. When they go to their God, He'll deal with them. And realize that you can be free of all that. You can be free of anything if you're willing to give it up. And once you do that, I think you can find your path, and you can find the joy in life. And surround yourself with people who are willing to find their own joy too. I think it's important. Even though we're part of a big community of this earth, we are also just individuals that need to find that for ourselves. There's only one time around.
Yeah, and it's important to do so.
Huh?
I said, and it's important to do that.
Yeah, I think it's important to find that kind of clarity and reason to be here. I've seen so much alcoholism and drug abuse. I mean, I've heard people say, "Oh, we drive through the reservations out west, and they're just a bunch of drunken bums laying," but they haven't experienced what those people have experienced. Maybe someday the other people that have those problems can say, "This isn't," give that away, give that back to somebody who deserves that shame, because you don't deserve it.
I just want to give you the opportunity to say anything else you wanted. I don't know if you had anything pertinent where you were like, I really wanted to say this. I really wanted to
I
express
think I
this.
pretty much went through all the little notes and questions that you had given me, and things to say that were my experiences. So,
Okay.
okay.
Well, then I guess we'll wrap it up.